It is the world's worst humanitarian crisis. As Sudan enters its third year of civil war, hunger and atrocities are mounting. Tens of thousands of people have been killed and some 12 million displaced. In a moment, we'll hear from an analyst who fled Sudan 2 years ago. But first, a look at how this conflict unfolded.
Mass protests broke out in December 2018 after government subsidy cuts led to a spike in the price of bread. The demonstrations also reflected anger against corruption and poor governance. Taking advantage of the situation, in April 2019, the military toppled President Omar al-Bashir and began talks with opposition groups on the transition to democracy. A power-sharing deal in August installed Prime Minister Abdallah Hamdok, part of an agreement between the military and civil society groups. At the end of October 2021, Sudan's fragile move towards democracy was thrown into chaos when the military seized power again. But in April 2023, a power struggle between the army and the paramilitary RSF escalated into full-blown conflict.
And that full-blown conflict appears to have no end in sight. There are fears Sudan could now be split into two rival administrations. Meanwhile, the head of the UN's refugee agency has warned that ignoring the plight of Sudan's refugees will have, quote, catastrophic consequences.
They've escaped the horrors of their homeland. Famine, as well as human rights abuses. Sudan's economy and health system are broken too. Estimates put the number of dead at between 40,000 to 150,000 since the conflict began in April 2023, aid organisations say. Some 9 million people have been displaced to other areas of Sudan, and over 3 million have fled to neighbouring countries and beyond.
As the conflict and displacement have intensified, funding has lagged. Funding for the regional refugee response plan is now less than 10% of what is needed, making it impossible to cover the most basic needs. The latest global cuts in humanitarian funding have put critical programs at risk, with teams forced to make unreasonable choices.
The conflict began as a power struggle between two military factions. Sudan's National Army, the Sudanese Armed Forces, or SAF, led by General Abdel Fattah al-Burhan, and the paramilitary Rapid Support Forces, or RSF, headed by Mohamed Hamdan Dagalo. Tensions between the two sides escalated after the ousting of longtime ruler Omar al-Bashir in 2019. Violence boiled over 2 years ago over how to integrate the RSF into Sudan's National Army. Now, amid ongoing fighting, the SAF controls most of Sudan's east and north, while the RSF is the major force in the west. Both sides have been accused of human rights abuses. 2 years of this brutal and senseless conflict must be a wake-up call to the parties to lay down their weapons and for the international community to act. The ongoing conflict is not merely a power struggle, but is significantly influenced by economic and business interests of national and international actors. More groups have been drawn into the war over the past 2 years. International backers stand accused of arming the conflict parties, all of which provides for little hope for an end to the fighting anytime soon.
And I'm now joined by Dallia Abdelmoniem, a political commentator from Khartoum who fled Sudan with her family 2 years ago and now lives in Cairo. Now, 2 years of war in Sudan, where does the country stand right now?
And in even more war and conflict, the reports coming out from Elbashir the past few days make for a harrowing read. And there's still pockets of fighting between the RSF, from the RSF in areas that are, supposedly under the control of the Sudanese armed forces. And the longer this war continues, the worse the situation becomes, not just politically wise or militarily wise, but even more so for the civilians, the Sudanese civilians. Like you rightly said, it's the largest and it's the worst humanitarian crisis currently in the world, and very little is done to address it and to address also finding a way to end this war or to at least reach a ceasefire.
Well, it is the worst humanitarian crisis in the world, according to the UN. And give us an idea about the current humanitarian situation there in Sudan.
Well, the aid cuts has really impacted, for example, the community kitchens, which were set up by Sudanese volunteers to help feed people, especially in areas that were besieged or under heavy fighting, like Khartoum, in Darfur, and other areas of Sudan. And so from these community kitchens, we're feeding, or at least providing meals once a day. Now they don't. 80% of these community kitchens have been forced to shut down due to lack of funding. And so and at the same time, the healthcare system has been decimated. Nearly 80 to 90% of working clinics and hospitals have either been hit or impacted. Aid workers, medical workers have been targeted. Just a few days ago, 9 aid workers in Elbashir were killed. And so even those who provide help are not able to do that. And then you run the risk of disease. Cholera was rampant. There is famine. It has been confirmed in several areas in Sudan. There's malnutrition. There's sexual violence. And the continuing fighting. When indiscriminate bombings hit a marketplace, killing nearly more than 100 people, there's no safety. There's no safety. There's no security. There's nothing basically for a lot of Sudanese still in Sudan.
Now, you mentioned the dire lack of funding. There's another aid conference starting in London today. Will that bring any relief or solutions?
I hope so. I mean, I'm waiting to see the outcome of this conference. But honestly, I personally am getting sick and tired of all the empty statements we keep getting about Sudan and the pearl clutching and the hand-wringing about how bad the situation is, when actually no decisive action has been taken to find a way to end this war or to end the misery that the Sudanese people, the most vulnerable of people, are facing at this moment in time. Like already in the past 2 days in the Zamzam camp in Elbashir, more than 400,000 already displaced and refugees have been forced to flee. More than 400 people have been killed. There are reports the RSF is targeting women and children. Their targets are ethnically and racially driven. And nothing has been said and nothing has been done. When the likes of the United Arab Emirates are invited to attend conferences and are feted and celebrated, when in fact it's been proven by the United Nations and aid agencies and human rights organizations, as well as civil society members, that the UAE is supporting and supplying the RSF with weapons. There is a weapons embargo over Darfur, but the weapons keep coming into Sudan via Darfur through Chad, with the help of the UAE. So tell me, why should I have any expectations for this conference to actually do anything when, no one has sanctioned the United Arab Emirates, no one has pressured the United Arab Emirates to step back from their support. And it's not just the UAE, it's also other countries that are supporting both sides to this war. And this is a war on civilians because we are the ones who have paid the price for this war. It's not the generals, it's not their armies, it's us, the civilians. And even before the war, we, as a country, as a society, we were suffering. Healthcare was on its knees, education, social services. Now that's all gone. And the only way people are getting help is through aid agencies and through these community-led volunteer frontliners.
The political commentator Dallia Abdelmoniem in Cairo, thank you very much.
Thank you.
For more on this, we're joined now by Elbashir Idris, a human rights activist and Sudan analyst in Cardiff. Thanks for being with us. Elbashir, our report noted that this conflict involves 2 rival generals, but there must be more to it. What exactly are they fighting for?
First and foremost, thank you for having me. Today's day 73 731. I can't believe just how long this has been going. And the generals themselves, first it started off, I believe, through my research, as a coup attempt by the Rapid Support Forces led by Hemeti exactly 2 years ago today. That coup attempt failed, and as such, it plunged the whole country into a devastating war where the generals that have external backing, may that be with SAF from Egypt and Saudi Arabia, or the RSF with its main backer, the United Arab Emirates, Chad, Kenya, and more. And the way this war is going, it seems that the international backers do not want to stop this war, as they seek to profiteer from the looting and the pillaging, and even the displacement of the Sudanese people from their lands to capture resources, but also capture influence. The UAE has a business deal with the Rapid Support Forces pre-war to smuggle Sudanese gold out of the country to go to UAE at very cheap prices. And that is what essentially funds the Rapid Support Forces on its acts of genocidal intent and terror. We've seen for these past 2 years just how complicated the dynamics have been, not only in Sudan, but geopolitically as well, as it seems that the regional actors and beyond believe that they can get a slice of their cake of Sudan. And essentially due to its strategic location as well along the Red Sea, but also connecting to the rest of Sahel on the western Darfur, this is a country that many international players do not want to share with others and essentially try to capture it all for itself. And that is exactly what we're seeing with the Rapid Support Forces. So this may be a war initially seen as a war between two generals. However, for the past 2 years, we've seen a disproportionate amount of violence used by the Rapid Support Forces. And that's not acquitting the Sudanese armed forces, but I'm saying much more disproportionate by the Rapid Support Forces. And it seems that this campaign of terror that we've been seeing for the past 2 years, they don't want to let it up. And because of that, it's put the Sudanese people in a very difficult situation. With the international community feeling that they've abandoned them, they have felt they have no other choice but to fend for themselves and their homes.
Let me ask you about that conference that's going on in London right now. The talks on Sudan, I understand, are involving some of those countries that you mentioned who are backing the warring parties. What can you tell us about who's represented at this conference and what they're doing there?
Well, I can say for certain that the Sudanese people aren't being represented. And that's because the warring parties and those who speak on their behalf are not represented. Fair enough. But if we wish to see an end to this conflict, I'm pretty sure that these two will need to speak to each other face to face at some point. And having a conference without them, whilst also inviting the main backers of this war as well from the external actors, with SAF and the Sudanese army, with Egypt and Saudi Arabia, and the UAE as well attending, that backs the RSF. It's a bit hypocritical, I find, that they wish to find a solution to the end to this war, but not Sudanese voices on the ground.
Okay, let me ask you then, since that conference is taking place, there are talks taking place involving some of those backers that supposedly have influence on the warring parties. What, if anything, might convince the warring parties and their backers to end the fighting?
Well, it's not going to come from the United Kingdom. Unfortunately, ever since President Trump has come into power, the international order and system has essentially collapsed and has become toothless from international sanctions. The ICC, the ICJ's legitimacy is currently on the line in terms of whether it can actually fulfill the jurisdiction of the case between Sudan versus the UAE. So the International
Court of Justice, Sure.
Yes, and it certainly had changed. And so what I want to say is that the world has now gone into bargains and deals, into strong arming. And the way we see it in terms of the relations in geopolitics, it seems that Trump likes to listen to money. And with Saudi Arabia, they've said they're wishing to invest $1 trillion to the US over the next 5 years, the UAE $1.4 trillion in the next 10 years. This amount of influence that is going to the US It's essentially what the regional backers are trying to buy. They're trying to buy more influence from superpowers so they can influence the direction of this war.
OK, it is a complex geopolitical puzzle there. Human rights activist and Sudan analyst Elbashir Idris in Cardiff. Thank you very much.